I think it may be safe to say at this point that the quarterback position is the most important position to build around. Now that we have these guys that can throw the ball with volume as well as rush for 30, 40 yards a game, it's a cheat code. We've been saying this for about the past 4 seasons now, that quarterback strategy should be entirely different in today's landscape compared to what it was a decade ago. But there's one glaring red flag issue, whatever you want to call it, with quarterback scoring and with the quarterbacks that we want to be targeting. So I want to talk about the elephant in the room. I want to talk about the ugly part of chasing these quarterbacks scoring a ridiculous amount of points and possibly try to identify some better players we should be taking instead. But before we get into anything, make sure you go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. If you want to check out any of these player props, if you want to get into a draft with us on the live stream, my favorite player prop this week will be the Trevor Lawrence, more than 273.5 total yards. You can find the link on Underdog Fantasy in the description of this video, in the comment section. When you sign up with promo code FLOCK, they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. And with a minimum of a $10 deposit, you will get our 2023 Dynasty Fantasy Football rankings. So make sure you take advantage of that. But I think that should be it. And what I want to first talk about is the cheat code that rushing yards and rushing touchdowns give a quarterback in fantasy. Now, of course, you have your extremes. You have Justin Fields leading the NFL in rushing yards at the quarterback position, putting up an obnoxious amount of points, while the Chicago Bears are the worst team in the NFL. You have those extreme quarterbacks that can run the ball at a level we've never seen before. We already know that those guys are phenomenal in fantasy. We already know that those guys are going to score a zillion points. But even just going out there and averaging 30 rushing yards per game is a massive, massive difference-making ability. Because if we go through and map this out, now I'm no mathematician, but I can get out a little notepad here and we can write out, say, you're a quarterback and you average 30 rushing yards a game. This isn't something that the quarterbacks back 10 years ago at the top of fantasy were doing. Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, they weren't getting to 30 rushing yards a game. And I'm about to show you how big of a difference this actually is, especially if we assume that these quarterbacks, say, average about 6 to 7 rushing touchdowns a season. So let's say you get 30 rushing yards a game and you get 6 rushing touchdowns in a year. So like I said, I'm no mathematician, but if we multiply 30 by 17, we are going to end up with 510 rushing yards on the year. Right here, we got 510. And if you are going to end up with 510 rushing yards in the season, that's an additional 51 fantasy points. Now we add on the 6 rushing touchdowns that you had. We're not asking a lot here. That's another 36. You're at 87 fantasy points added on to what you can do as a passer. Now, assuming that you're playing in a league where 25 passing yards equals 1 point, that is as if you are just adding on 2,200 passing yards to your end of season statistics from a fantasy football standpoint. So even if you're not Lamar Jackson, even if you're not Justin Fields, but instead you're just getting 30 rushing yards a game, you are a cheat code in fantasy and you have a floor ceiling combination that other players simply cannot get to. So for this reason, I've been building my own teams around these quarterbacks that run the ball. I've been advocating that other people do the same. And I am not sure that we've been correct in this, because there's been one thing that I've been ignoring that is very hard to overlook at this point. And that is the injury risk associated with these quarterbacks that are going to run the ball. This season, it was wild. Last season, it was wild, and we ignored it just because we thought, okay, well, this isn't going to be something we have to worry about going forward. But let's go through and let's look at these rushing quarterbacks. These guys that you wanted to take, given the fact that they have this floor ceiling combo that nobody else can come close to. Starting off with someone that y'all know I've loved for a very long time, Trey Lance. Trey Lance, we thought the man was going to be a great rushing quarterback. What happens? His first game out there, he's not the best. Second game out there, done. Done for the year. Okay, well, we know that's just maybe a one-off instance with Trey Lance. Let's go to the guy that we always want to compare him with, and let's look at Justin Fields. And from here on out, we're going to be looking at every quarterback that has averaged 35 rushing yards per game back in 2022. Every quarterback. You have Justin Fields in 2021 dealing with broken ribs. Justin Fields missing time in 2021 with broken ribs. Not great. 2022, Justin Fields had a shoulder AC joint injury, missed time with that, hip strain, missed time with that. So with Justin Fields, started 25 games over the past 2 years, or played in 25 games. So you're seeing a decent amount of time missed. Keep in mind, 17-game season, 34 games. Now, of course, Justin Fields didn't start as a rookie, so maybe that's unfair. But let's go to the other quarterback that runs the ball like crazy. Let's look at Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, over the past 2 seasons, has played 24 games. Lamar Jackson, 2022, missed 6 games with a PCL sprain. Lamar Jackson, in 2021, had an ankle sprain week 14 and then missed the rest of the season. So it doesn't matter how many points Lamar Jackson is scoring all of our teams at the beginning part of the year. If by the time we get to the fantasy football playoffs, he's not there. He's not someone we can start. Let's go to our next guy. Let's go to someone that's been dominant this year, one of the league-winning players, and he demonstrates the ceiling that these rushing quarterbacks have, Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts played 30 games over the past 2 years. 2022 dealt with the shoulder injury. 2021 dealt with an ankle injury. So yes, he did not miss too much time, but just knowing that this is something that we're having to worry about in the slightest, that he is dealing with these injuries, could be a lot worse than it was. Now our next guy, the majority of the Dynasty community's quarterback 1 overall, Josh Allen, hasn't really missed any time. But in 2022, he did deal with an elbow injury. We really didn't know what was going on with that. Sounds like it was fine. 2021, he had a turf toe. So still on the injury list. But like I said, Josh Allen dodged those bullets, which is phenomenal. Let's go over to someone else that averaged 35 rushing yards a game. Daniel Jones in this season. Oh my gosh, Daniel Jones stayed healthy. He had an ankle injury, but didn't miss any time. Last year, we know that he had a season-ending neck injury, had a concussion as well. I mean, this season was his first time in his entire NFL career of playing 16 games. The man was drafted in 2019, and we've had 1 full season from Daniel Jones. Going over to Kyler Murray, our next quarterback that's running the ball. 2022, hamstring strain, misses the middle of the year, comes back. What happens? ACL tear. 2021 had an ankle sprain as well, which he missed a stretch of games with. So Kyler Murray over the past 2 years has played 25 games, will miss time this upcoming season as well. So we've seen that if your quarterback's running the ball 35 or more yards per game, most likely you're dealing with injuries. Now, the 2 names that are popping off on this list that you haven't had to deal with injuries with are going to be Josh Allen as well as Jalen Hurts. But one other thing that I really want to highlight here is the age of these quarterbacks that run the ball. Because we go through and look at this. Over the past 2 years, Justin Fields played at 22, 23 years old. Lamar Jackson played at 24, 25 years old. Jalen Hurts, 23 and 24. Josh Allen, 25 and 26. Daniel Jones, 24, 25. Kyler Murray, 24 and 25. So we are already dealing with the laundry list of injuries for the majority of these quarterbacks that run the ball while they're young. What happens if we see a similar career arc to what we've had with running backs historically, where we know that if you're taking those additional hits, that all of a sudden your effectiveness may be taking a small hit? Or at the same time, what happens if some of these quarterbacks that are so successful because they can run, all of a sudden aren't going to be able to be there 5 years from now playing at that same level? So it's a very difficult thing to grasp. How do we look at quarterbacks that have a ceiling higher than anything else we can imagine? How do we look at Jalen Hurts? How do we look at Josh Allen and say, okay, well, we have to keep in mind that they do have injury risk that we may not find elsewhere. I hate to bring up the Joe Burrow example because obviously Burrow missed his rookie season, but I think you get the point if we're looking at the larger sample. How do we value that rushing production versus the long-term security that you maybe get with a different playing style? How I am starting to think I may implement this in my own leagues is in terms of redraft leagues, in terms of best ball formats, where you're only investing into a quarterback for a single year. Honestly, I don't care. Honestly, I'm willing to roll the dice. I don't care if they're a little more at risk to miss some time, if they're a little more at risk to have an injury, because the ceiling is so high, and that's what I want to be chasing. However, if we are going to be looking at a dynasty format where instead we should be probably focusing in on a little more of the long-term security that we are going to get with these guys, I think we should be using this as a tiebreaker. Redraft, I don't care. Dynasty, I do. And the example that I'm going to give with this is if you're pulling up my dynasty rankings, I have Patrick Mahomes ahead of Josh Allen. I'll tell you, probably in redraft leagues this next year, I'm going to be taking Josh Allen ahead of Mahomes, but nope, not doing that in Dynasty. And in our tier 2, I actually have Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert ahead of Jalen Hurts, and I'm slightly considering moving Lawrence ahead of Jalen Hurts as well. In redraft, will I be doing that? Nope. In redraft, I'll be taking Jalen Hurts at the top of that tier. Jalen Hurts will be my quarterback 3. I have Lamar Jackson down there at 7. I'll tell you in redraft, depending on the situation he finds himself in 2023, I guarantee you I'm taking Lamar Jackson over names like Trevor Lawrence. And we're going to Justin Fields, Kyler Murray down here at 9 and 10 in a separate tier as well. So I don't want to say you can't draft these players. Obviously, you have to weigh the risk and the reward. I'm more so using this as a tiebreaker from a dynasty value perspective, whereas in redraft, hell, swing for the fences. Go for that player that can break fantasy football. Let me know what you think. I am worried about these quarterbacks now that they get to their age 26, 27 season, how they may transition. We saw this with Dak Prescott, where Dak Prescott ran the ball a little more at the beginning of his career versus later on. Same thing with Russell Wilson. I'd make an argument that both those quarterbacks were significantly better from a fantasy football standpoint at the beginning of their career as well. But again, let me know what you think. I am very interested in hearing your thought process. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, go down there, drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. If you want to get into a draft with us on the live stream, if you want to go get in a draft in a public lobby, if you want to check out any of these player props, it's all the same place, Underdog Fantasy. When you sign up with promo code FLOCK, they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. And with a minimum of a $10 deposit, you are going to get our 2023 Dynasty rankings. But I think that's all I got for you. Thank you again. I appreciate you and hope you have a great day.